casa de palha, chiqueiro de bode. Com esse coco ninguém pode. Oi, casa de palha, chiqueiro de bode. Com esse coco ninguém pode. Oi, pode, 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 pode. Com esse coco ninguém pode. Oi, pode, 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 pode. Com esse coco ninguém pode.
Genuinely though, right? Genuinely. There's a wonderful moment in a novella that I read a few nights ago by the Spanish writer and philosopher Miguel de Unamuno, in which the titular protagonist, the priest, Don Manuel, goes into rhapsodies about a young country girl herding goats next to a lake and singing in a voice fresher than the water itself. Here's the passage. Look over there, Don Manuel pointed out to us. You'd think time had stopped. It's as though that girl had been there forever, standing just as she is, and singing just as she is, and as though she had to go on being there forever, as she was when my consciousness began, as she will be when it comes to an end. Along with the rocks, the clouds, the trees, the waters, that country girl is part of nature and not of history. I think this description struck me so forcibly because I'd been thinking recently about Sara Porpino, a singer, songwriter, percussionist from Bahia, that sort of untamed Afro-Brazilian heart of North Brazil, who combines bird songs and cheerful pandero playing in a way that has garnered her a few 100,000 followers on Instagram. What most interests me about Sara Porpino, especially when you binge a whole series of her reels, which the idiot often does as a way to delay getting out of bed in the mornings, is her vibe. And what I mean by vibe is really her essence. As you may know, if you're a signed up subscribing member to Team Idiot, this idiot is very interested in the Enneagram's intricate ego psychology system when it comes to helping him understand what makes the various iterations of the human animal tick. There's a lot of psychology in the Enneagram, both the pop kind and the more serious stuff. Psychoanalysis, spirituality, mysticism, and other assorted phenomenologies and ologies all packed into its framework. But at its very core, as explored in one of my favorite books, Almas's Facets of Unity, is the idea of essence. And essence, as Almas discusses it, is something fundamental, unchanging and true within us, a quality that is less about what we do and more about what, as opposed to who we are. Essence is a series of human ice cream flavors, if you like. You might have the various toppings, the mix-ins, a cone or whatever, a bowl that changes the overall ice cream eating experience depending on, where you got it from and the mood you're in whilst consuming the stuff. But the essential flavor, the essence of whatever frozen custard you choose, be it a robust dark chocolate, a delicate vanilla bean or bold pistachio, whatever it is remains the same. And similarly, essence, we might say, is that unshakable flavor of being, your quintessential existential taste, odor and resonance, the unmistakable signature of you, like the smell of your own farts or your unwashed armpits, that sort of thing, which probably no one else but you can truly tolerate because of it being ultimately your signature scent. My essence, as you may have noticed, is fundamentally idiotic and obnoxious. Though, of course, other manifestations of essence are available, and it turns out the human species, kindly provides about 9 distinct varieties to choose from, right? So, type 1s, obnoxiously pedantic, self-righteous, and inflexible.
It's just that the laundry is never sorted correctly. Like, never. It's always next to the hamper, and then I have to re-pull it out.
2s, obnoxiously martyr-like and manipulative.
Yeah, really nothing new. You know me, just smiling and gaining and losing energy from meeting everyone's needs at the same time.
3's obnoxiously boastful, achievement-oriented.
You see, the bar was set so high, I strained many a hamstring, sailing right over it.
4's obnoxiously melodramatic, moody.
I would like to begin our time together today by making a list of people who have wronged me this week, starting with my most intimate family relationships and extending then to acquaintances and strangers.
Moody, self-indulgent.
Your doctorate will be of no use to you. Here in this bleak, beautiful, dystopian wasteland that is the garden of my soul.
5's obnoxiously secretive and emotionally unavailable.
Of course, it was pioneered by Dr. Aaron T. Back in the 1960s while he was a psychiatrist at the University of what? Oh, we talk about me. So we don't just sit and talk about theories of psychology. Oh, that sounds deeply unpleasant. Who would agree to that?
6 is obnoxiously anxious and suspicious.
I know that you're the best. I've carefully analyzed and researched all of the therapists in the area and watched the reviews come in for the last 6 years before I committed to you. You're the one I picked. I do have a quick question though, real quick before we start, about a review Nancy 213 wrote last fall.
7's obnoxiously impulsive and distractible.
Some therapists give you like Play-Doh to squeeze or like hand puppets. Those would be rad. Battleship maybe while we talk it. No, we just talk. That's okay.
8.
I am 100% willing to admit that I'm wrong if I'm wrong. It's just that I've never actually ever been wrong.
The worst. Obnoxiously domineering, confrontational, insensitive.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the mat on that one. Bring it on. I know I could use kinder words, but why bother? I mean, can we just cut to the chase in every conversation all the time? No? That's why I'm having issues, okay.
And what about those lovely 9s? Yes, the loveliest of the types.
Sharing the opinions and ideas that I express to you within the confines of this very beautifully appointed office.
Well, even they are obnoxiously passive, stubborn, and so very, very charmingly complacent, right?
So you can't tell anyone what I say here? I mean, my mother-in-law, she sighs when I ask her for help with the children.
I've forgotten my teacup. How we doing, guys? How we doing? How we doing? All good? Yeah. Okay, great. What do you think of the reading? You know there was an AI, right? A very good one. I thought a very, very good one. Okay, 9s. What else is there? 9s, blah, 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 obnoxiously. Least obnoxious, but for that very reason, quite obnoxious. For Almaz, the essence of 8 is rooted in that sort of holy truth, as he calls it, not as a cognitive idea, but as a perception of comprehensive unity, the understanding that all the dimensions of reality are inseparable and facets of the same thing. So, you know, fucking or praying or fighting or singing or playing, whatever it is, are really no different then as forms of being and doing. All of these exist simultaneously, seamlessly interwoven within the unified whole of the idiotic human experience. And this perception, in a way both lovely and horrifying, essentially dissolves duality and the illusion of separateness. Yet even as 8s intuitively recognize, hierarchies as illusory, they still place themselves right at the top because, leaders, born conquerors, benefiting from our human hierarchies whilst simultaneously challenging and dissolving the ego's inherent sense of division. So this is the 8, right? And what can I say? When I experience Porpino, her essence, her flavor, pistachio, if you like, is in my estimation, it's pure Enneagram 8. There's a sort of unaffected wildness to her presence, a kind of unapologetic vitality that feels at once rooted and powerful, as though she's standing at the crossroads of nature and history, refusing to be contained by either. Her music, her energy, her sort of unguarded yet utterly commanding presence, you're not going to mess with her. All of them quintessentially 8, which is why watching her reels can often feel a little bit like witnessing somebody embodying a kind of eternal freshness, sort of holy truth, like that girl by the lake in Unamuno's story, only with, you know, the pandero in her hand and sort of the Bahia rhythms in her soul. So, what has this got to do with God and porn stars and oolong tea? Well, a few years ago, I read this biography, Pulitzer Prize winning biography no less, of God by Jack Miles. And in the narrative of the Old Testament, right, God manifests for the Pulitzer Prize winning Jack Miles, but also for all of us, you know, as a kind of quintessential textbook Enneagram 8, embodying this type's core traits of intensity, command, and control. His interactions are, you know, with humanity are sort of direct and authoritative, driven by this profound need to assert sovereignty and elicit unwavering loyalty. You know, God's relationship with his followers is fundamentally transactional, marked by this very clear give and take dynamic. You know, obedience in exchange for protection, worship in exchange for favor. It's been like, you know, it's like us too, right? And this aligns with the Enneagram 8's fear of vulnerability and betrayal, giving us, their protective yet uncompromising stance that seeks to sort of preemptively secure our position at all times and enforce our will as if the universe depended on it.
I will end every single international crisis that the current administration has created.
Which it sort of does.
You turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
Or doesn't. Apart from my own biological father and me, a little bit, does this remind you of anyone in your life or in the greater human ecosphere? Remember, there are also 3 types or subtypes of 8, depending on their dominant instinct, right? So, Trump, self-preservation 8, focused, you know, survival-oriented, relentless in securing personal power resources. Thatcher, social 8, commanding, hierarchical, fixated on sort of shaping collective order and asserting control over the system. While Madonna, you know, sexual 8, sexual idiot, bold, provocative, fiercely commanding, using her charisma and intensity to sort of dominate the cultural narrative in her time, no longer, sorry Madonna, and redefine power dynamics in both personal and professional relationships. Although Charlie XCX, is she not kind of the Madonna of today? Discuss or don't. Now, when the idiot is not reading, you know, Pulitzer Prize winning non-fiction or looking at reels on Instagram, to delay the inevitable moment of pretending to be a functional human agent, he does interviews with porn stars, because by and large, this dude still trying to work out why women in particular, less so for the men, you know, we're basically just these sort of rage-filled apes with Wi-Fi, so well, what do you want? But more so, why would women, right, choose rationally, it seems, as rational as any other choice, to participate in the filmic capture of their mouths, genitals, anuses, ani, being, you know, penetrated, controlled, dominated by engorged men's vessels, their faces slapped, nipples pinched, prodded, otherwise fingered, I don't know, fisted, assaulted. Not the sort of thing I would want done to me on a daily basis. Forgive me for my boring and vanilla sexual proclivities, but I think I finally understood what it's all about for the girls, for those girls. Thanks to Porpino, God, and Valentina Nappi.
Hey, what's the most dudes you've done in one scene?
50?
No.
No.
50?
Yeah. Do they all nut?
So, Valentina Nappi is an Enneagram 8.
No, I think only like 20 of them now.
Damn.
Just you and 50 guys?
She talks 8.
To Rocco Siffredi is like, hey,
Oh,
I want to do
no.
porn. I want to do well. I want to make a career of this. I love it, blah, blah, blah. And after 3 months, I had this giant dick in my ass.
She thinks 8.
Your first scene. You
Yeah.
did it an hour, 40 minutes of pure anal.
Yes.
First scene.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Well, no, it's
Were
not
you doing
crazy.
anal pre this? Like you
I
knew how
was
to
doing
prepare?
it, but I didn't know I liked it.
She acts 8.
Mind controlling 9 dudes.
She embodies 8.
not-
You did a 9-dude anal gangbang your second scene?
She radiates 8, Max.
It was hard. So I had to learn how to do that.
Even when Nappy is juggling 50 dicks, not that I've seen that video, but I can imagine it. She is very, very clearly, I promise you, in charge. Physically, she's getting fucked. Of course, that's the deal. But metaphysically, and that's where it counts, guys and gals, she's the one who's doing the fucking with your head or your nervous system or whatever she wants to fuck with. You know, read the Old Testament, check out how Yahweh does it. That is the 8th spirit. Now, for us mere mortals, this is hard to grasp, which is why we need Porpino, also an 8, but a sort of softer subtype, not Pompino, Italians, okay? Anyway, you know, a sort of a sexual 8, rock star to porn star, etc., etc. Essentially, my hypothesis here is that if you're an Enneagram 7 or an 8 or a 9 and you're working in porn and you're getting your kid off and you're having others film your genitalia and its various secretions, whether emitted from or deposited into in graphic detail, this I am positing is almost precisely the equivalent of whacking away for an 8 at your pandero and mimicking bird noises with your human beak. The pandero here, not to be confused with the tambourine, no. Precision crafted, Brazilian frame drum, meticulously engineered, tunable animal skin or synthetic head stretched over circular wooden frame with evenly spaced, precisely calibrated metal platineas, you know, little plates, platina symbols that produce that kind of crisp, resonant sound capable of oscillating between melodic subtlety and a kind of, you know, percussive intensity with an almost hallucinatory precision. The pandero here is a kind of synecdoche embodying both the Enneagram 7's kind of boundless energy and ability to infuse excitement into any musical setting, as well as the 8's assertive, commanding presence, demanding an almost militaristic level of mastery and control to dictate the rhythm, you know, with the unshakable authority, the unshakable hand, doing whatever it's doing. But also, like a true 9, the pandero is this sort of consummate harmonizer, effortlessly blending into an array of musical genres while enhancing the overall cohesion of the performance, elevating everything around it into a certain form of magnificence. Why didn't I plug the frickin' kettle in over there, Max? That's stupid, isn't it? God, you would think this place is run by a frickin' idiot. Right. Max, where you going? Where you going? We've got the grand finale. The grand oolong, leg kicking, prancing, dancing, Swan Lake finale. So anyway, yeah, the 9 doing all of that amazing stuff without stealing the spotlight. So here's the finale. So, what is it? Yeah, so the next time I need to watch porn, which probably won't occur for a good while now because, you know, I'm on this wonderful libido diminishing substance called sertraline, I will be thinking, you know, amidst the genitals and the secretions, you know, about panderos and cosmic rhythms and existential unity. And maybe after watching this video, you will be thinking, especially you, Max, those kinds of thoughts too. Ciao.